Have you ever wondered what truly haunts the streets of London after dark? Tonight, we're venturing into the top 5 most dangerous places in London, where history, mystery, and real-life ghost stories collide. From shadowy cemeteries to historic pubs stained with secrets, these locations aren't just landmarks, they're homes to restless spirits and chilling encounters that have left even the bravest shaken. Join me as we uncover the dark corners of the city, explore first-hand experiences, and reveal the eerie tales that make these places legendary. Brace yourself. London's ghosts are waiting. If you love uncovering London's darkest secrets and real ghost stories, hit that subscribe button and join our adventure into the unknown. 1. Tower of London. I still remember the chill that ran down my spine the first time I stepped inside the Tower of London at night. By day, it looks like a grand fortress, filled with curious tourists and cheerful chatter. But once the sun goes down, the tower transforms. The laughter disappears, the air grows heavier, and the walls seem to whisper with memories too dark to fade. It was late October, and I had joined a small after-dark ghost tour. The wind outside was cutting cold, but inside the stone walls, it felt even colder, a cold that wasn't natural. It clung to my skin, pressed against my chest, as if the tower itself was warning me not to stay too long. Our guide led us into the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, the resting place of Anne Boleyn. I had read about her execution, but standing there, where her headless body was buried, felt entirely different. I swear the air in the chapel shifted. For a moment, I thought I saw a faint white figure at the far end of the pews, standing perfectly still. My heart began to hammer. I blinked hard, and she was gone. But the heaviness remained, like unseen eyes fixed on me. The most unsettling moment came later in the Bloody Tower, where the 2 young princes were said to have been murdered centuries ago. The room was dimly lit, the walls stained with age. As I stood in the corner, straining to hear the guide's words, I felt something else, soft, faint, like the sound of children crying. My throat tightened. I told myself it was my imagination, but then, clear as day, I heard a quiet laugh right behind me. I spun around. No one was there. My skin went cold, and every hair on my body stood up. I wanted to speak, to ask if anyone else had heard it, but my voice refused to leave my throat. All I could think was how unbearably sad the place felt, as if the walls themselves were still holding on to the last cries of the children who never got to leave. When the tour finally ended, and I walked back out into the London night, the air felt lighter, almost safe again. But the memory of that laughter, that eerie, hollow laugh in the Bloody Tower, still clings to me. People often ask if I believe in ghosts. I never used to. But after that night, I can't dismiss what I heard and felt. The Tower of London isn't just a historic landmark. It's alive with the weight of its past, and if you stand still enough, if you really listen, you'll hear the echoes of lives lost long ago. And once you do, you'll never forget them. 2. Highgate Cemetery. I had always heard the stories about Highgate Cemetery, but nothing could have prepared me for what I felt when I actually stepped through those iron gates. Even in daylight, the place feels heavy, with its crumbling tombs and ivy-covered graves pressing in from all sides. But I went there in the late evening, long after the crowds had left. I thought I was ready. I was wrong. The first thing that hit me was the silence. Not the kind of silence you get in a quiet park, but a thick, suffocating silence, as if even the air was holding its breath. My footsteps on the gravel path sounded unnaturally loud, and every time I stopped walking, it felt like someone else had stopped just behind me. I remember pausing in front of an old mausoleum, its door half open, the stone dark with age. That's when I felt it, the sensation of being watched. My skin prickled, and I could almost feel eyes burning into the back of my neck. I tried to laugh it off, but my laugh sounded hollow, wrong. Then came the cold. It wasn't the evening chill, this was different. It hit me suddenly, a wave of icy air that wrapped around my chest and made it hard to breathe. I pulled my jacket tighter, but the cold seemed to seep from inside the ground itself. That was when I thought about the old stories I had read, the legend of the Highgate vampire, the tall shadowy figure with glowing red eyes that people swore they had seen moving between the graves. I wanted to turn back, but some part of me pushed forward. I told myself it was just curiosity, but honestly, it felt like something was drawing me deeper into the cemetery. My flashlight beam caught the angel statues, their stone faces cracked and eyeless, and for a moment I could have sworn one of them shifted, just slightly, as if it had turned its head to follow me. And then I saw it. A dark figure, taller than any man I'd ever seen, standing between two headstones. I froze. My light shook in my hand, and that's when I caught the faintest glint, two piercing red eyes staring back at me. My chest tightened. I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. The figure didn't walk, it seemed to slide closer, its outline blurring against the shadows. I don't remember deciding to run. My body just reacted. I sprinted down the path, branches scraping my arms, my breath ragged in my throat. I didn't look back until I burst out through the gates into the safety of the streetlights. Even now, when I think about that night, my stomach twists. People tell me it was just my imagination, that I was caught up in the stories. But I know what I saw in those red eyes. And I know the silence in Highgate wasn't empty, it was watching, waiting. Highgate Cemetery isn't just a resting place for the dead. It's something else entirely. Something that still lingers long after the gates are closed. 3. The 10 Bells Pub, Spitalfields. I'd heard about the 10 Bells Pub long before I ever stepped inside it. People always whispered about its connection to Jack the Ripper, saying some of his victims had their last drink here before meeting their violent end. To me, it sounded like just another old London pub with a dark history, nothing more. But the night I decided to go there, I realized it was much more than just history carved into brick and wood. The pub was crowded when I walked in. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the smell of beer filled the air. At first, it felt normal, almost too normal, and I thought maybe all the ghost stories were exaggerated. I found a seat upstairs, in the corner room where the wallpaper was peeling, and the wooden floor creaked under every step. That's when things began to change. The noise from downstairs seemed to fade, as though someone had turned down the volume. The room grew strangely quiet, the kind of quiet that presses into your ears. I looked around and realized I was completely alone up there. The air felt heavier, carrying a faint smell of old perfume, not the sweet kind, but something musky and suffocating, like it had been trapped in the walls for over a century. I tried to shake it off, but then I noticed something. The chair opposite mine pulled slightly away from the table, as if someone had just sat down. My heart skipped a beat. I told myself it was the uneven floor, but then I felt it, a sudden drop in temperature. My breath came out in faint clouds, though it wasn't that cold outside. And then I saw her. A woman in Victorian dress, her face pale, eyes hollow, standing just a few feet away. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me. My throat went dry, and my hands tightened around the glass I was holding. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Suddenly, she was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just gone. But in her place, a whisper brushed against my ear, so faint, but so clear, "He's still here." I nearly dropped my glass. I turned, but there was no one. The chair that had pulled out slowly scraped back against the floor, sliding into place on its own. My chest tightened, and every instinct screamed at me to leave. When I stumbled back downstairs, the sound of chatter and music rushed over me like a wave, almost too loud, as if the pub wanted to cover up what had just happened. I left my drink unfinished and walked out into the cold night air, my pulse still racing. People say the 10 Bells is haunted by Jack the Ripper's victims. After that night, I believe it. I don't know if it was Annie Chapman, Mary Kelly, or another forgotten soul, but someone was there with me in that room, someone who never left the pub after their last drink. And I know I'll never go back. 4. Greenwich Foot Tunnel. I had walked the Greenwich Foot Tunnel during the day many times, always thinking it was just a long, dimly lit pedestrian passage under the Thames. Nothing more. But the night I decided to go alone, I realized that tunnels like this have a way of turning ordinary places into something else entirely, something that watches you. It was a Thursday evening, late, and the streets above were quiet. I climbed down the narrow metal staircase into the tunnel, my only light coming from the weak yellow lamps lining the ceiling. At first, it felt like any normal walk, echoing footsteps, the distant hum of the river overhead. But soon, the quietness of the tunnel pressed in on me, thick and suffocating. Every sound I made seemed unnaturally loud, bouncing off the curved walls, like the tunnel was amplifying me, mocking me. Halfway through, I stopped to catch my breath. That's when I noticed it. A faint shadow at the far end of the tunnel, standing completely still. My stomach knotted. I told myself it must be another late-night pedestrian, but the shadow didn't move. Not even a twitch. My heart started racing. The lights flickered once, twice, and suddenly the shadow seemed closer. The air grew colder. Not the normal chill of London air, but something sharper, heavier, like it was wrapping itself around me. My hands started trembling. I tried to speak, to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. It was the strangest combination of fear and disbelief. I wanted to turn back, but I felt frozen in place. Then came the whispers. At first, I thought it was the sound of my own footsteps echoing oddly, but the whispers grew clearer, almost human, yet distorted. I couldn't make out words, just a soft murmur, like the tunnel itself was breathing secrets to me. My pulse thumped so loudly I was sure it could be heard by whatever was there. I forced myself to keep walking, each step trembling. And then I felt it, the unmistakable sensation of someone walking just behind me, almost brushing against my shoulder, though I was sure I was alone. I didn't dare look back. I just focused on the faint glow of the exit ahead. When I finally emerged into the open air of Greenwich, the night felt normal again. Cars drove by, people laughed somewhere in the distance. But my chest was still tight, my skin prickling. The tunnel hadn't let me go. Even now, days later, I can still feel the oppressive weight of those walls, the cold that wasn't natural, and the whispers that I'm not sure were ever real. I can't explain it rationally. Maybe it was fear, maybe my imagination, but deep down I know I wasn't alone in that tunnel. Something watches from the shadows of the Greenwich Foot Tunnel, and if you're brave, or foolish, enough to walk it alone at night, you'll feel it too. 5. Hampstead Heath. I had visited Hampstead Heath many times during the day, enjoying the greenery and the quiet walks, but that evening I made the mistake of going after sunset. I wanted to see the Heath in a different light, to experience the solitude it promised. What I found instead was something I wasn't prepared for. The sky had turned a deep, inky blue, and the trees stretched their branches like dark fingers over the paths. The usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves were gone. Instead, there was a silence so thick that every crunch of my boots on the fallen leaves sounded deafening. My heartbeat quickened. I followed the narrow path toward one of the older, secluded areas of the Heath. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to shift when I looked at it. I told myself it was just my imagination, but even as I thought that, a cold shiver ran down my spine. Then I heard it, a faint whispering, almost too soft to catch. I froze. My ears strained, trying to locate the source, but the whispers didn't come from any single direction. They floated around me, rising and falling with the wind. My chest tightened, and I felt my hands grow clammy. This is ridiculous, I thought. It's just the wind through the trees. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. As I moved forward cautiously, I glimpsed a shadowy figure at the edge of the path. Tall, dark, unmoving. I stopped, my breath caught in my throat. The figure didn't step forward, didn't move at all, but I could feel its presence pressing toward me, as if it were studying me. My mind raced with thoughts. Am I alone? Should I turn back? I forced myself to take another step, and the figure seemed to dissolve into the darkness. My legs were shaking as I hurried along the path, and the whispers grew louder, almost mocking me. At one point, I stumbled over a tree root and landed hard on the ground. For a split second, I thought I saw another shadow rising from behind a cluster of bushes, and I swear I heard a faint scream echoing through the trees. When I finally emerged onto a well-lit street, the city's hum felt like a blessing. My chest heaved, and I had to sit on a nearby bench just to calm down. Even now, days later, when I recall that night, my stomach tightens. Hampstead Heath is beautiful during the day, serene even. But after dark, it feels alive in a different way, haunted not by stories, but by something you can feel with your entire body. That night, I realized that some places are not just landscapes. They carry the weight of countless footsteps, countless secrets, and sometimes, if you're unlucky, you catch a glimpse of the shadows that refuse to leave. And Hampstead Heath, at night, will make sure you notice.